Hello Transformers fans, playing around with the new Super7 Bludgeon today from their Ultimates Transformers line. And this is the only figure that I've been interested in the Ultimates line for the Transformers. When it comes to the other lines that they do, some of their Thundercats figures are really cool. The Silverhawks, the new vac metal Silverhawks, are a vast improvement. But when it comes to Transformers, these just kind of remind me of Action Masters from 1990. Transformers that don't transform. It's cool if it's your thing, but it's not really my thing. I'd rather have a Transformer that transforms, but there are exceptions, and this is one of them. So I had the original Pretender Bludgeon, and I remember buying him at Zellers in Canada a long time ago on clearance. I think it was like $3 or $4 in the clearance bin, and it was after Transformers had been canceled, so it was probably 1991. And I wasn't really into toy collecting at the time, but I remember Bludgeon appearing prominently in the final issues of the Transformers Marvel comic, and there he is on the cover of issue 80. The final issue of Transformers. This is my original one from my teen years. And that's why this character is a little more sought after and well known than some of the other Decepticon pretenders, or just pretenders in general, because he is the final leader of the Decepticons in the comic. Never made any animated appearances in the original show. Sunbow show had ended by that point. But when it came time for Simon Furman to pick a final leader, when Megatron and Galvatron were out of the way, for some reason he picked this guy, who wasn't a leader class figure. He was just one of the smaller Decepticon pretenders. But he's the one that got the duty. And ever since then, he's had quite a following. Just want to mention that the box, as usual, is just absolutely amazing. Super7 really goes above and beyond all of their boxes. There's this kind of copper metallic outline to it. Really, really nice job. But this was meant to be opened. As nice as it looks in the package. And some kind of old school tech specs on the back with some artwork. But this is a definite open for me. And the reason I wanted to get this one, I'm a pass on all the other Transformers Ultimates Super 7 offerings. But when they announced this one, I knew I wanted to get this one. And by the way, it is still in stock at Big Bad Toy Store. And it just came out. I just got this. I pre-ordered it quite a while ago, and it just arrived. So I'm finally doing a brand spanking new release on the channel. I usually just kind of hang back and check out things a couple of weeks after they come out. But the reason I wanted to get this one in particular, as I release him from his plastic tomb, is I had that original, and then some years before I started doing YouTube videos and my collection really grew, I whittled my collection down a bit, and I wanted to just hang on to things that I really liked. And Bludgeon was one of the guys I didn't really have much attachment to, because he was one of the Transformers that I picked up really late in the game. So I didn't really have much sentimental attachment to him, and I sold him for not very much at all. Probably under $50. Took a look on eBay right now, and a complete G1 Bludgeon, it goes for like $350 US plus shipping. So now that I've got such a big collection, G1 Bludgeon was actually one of the Transformers that I wish I hadn't sold. And it's not because it's a great toy. G1 Bludgeon is not, he's not all that impressive. I mean, he's basically like, if you've seen one Pretender, you've seen them all. And I've got the 3 classic Pretenders in the back there. There's nothing really special about him. He's actually even less impressive than these guys, because he's smaller than these guys. But I just wanted him for the reason of him being a Decepticon leader and being so prominently featured in those final issues of the Marvel comic. And the final Decepticon leader. So I just wanted some representation of Bludgeon, not necessarily the first one, because I've had it, wasn't impressed by it, but just some representation. And there's been a few Bludgeons throughout the years, but nothing that really captured the look and the feel of the original, while at the same time improving upon it. So as far as the Pretenders go, not the other Transformers Ultimates, but the Pretenders, who were basically big action figures, it kind of reminds me of the Origins figures. They're almost exactly like your original He-Man figures, with some improvements, a little bit of extra articulation. And that's what I was hoping this would be, and these are just my first impressions playing around with him. He's a little on the loose side with his head. Legs are a little wobbly. But it's not the worst I've seen. The ankles are fairly loose. Unfortunately, that's a standard. But in terms of dynamic action poses, I don't think you're actually going to have much trouble with this. I mean, it's definitely sturdier than a lot of my Masters of the Universe Classics figures, as slightly floppy as he seems to be. And like I said, I don't have an original Bludgeon to compare with anymore, but I do have some of these G1 Pretenders. Here's a G1 Bumblebee, who I believe is a little bit taller than G1 Bludgeon. I'll pop in a picture of what I think the G1 Bludgeon height would be to line him up to the new one. But for the original Pretenders, this is all they could do. Arm articulation. That was it. Take the helmet off. They didn't even have head articulation. And their big gimmick was that, their only gimmick, well, some of the Pretenders could transform actually, but the standard ones like Bludgeon was, they open up and there's a little transformer in them. So there's a little Bumblebee in this one. And so you don't get that with this Bludgeon because he is an action figure. He's not supposed to be a Pretender. So you lose out on the ability to open up unless, I guess, you want to customize it. You wouldn't be able to fit much in there. But that's a gimmick I'm not really sad to see go because it really wasn't all that great in the first place. Losing a Transformers gimmick like the Action Masters did, that sucked because that was such a cool gimmick, transforming. But not being able to open up and have a tiny robot inside, which didn't look great. The original Bludgeon tank, green tank, didn't look great at all. I don't miss it, but it's nice that they included this, which this was the turret that came off the original Bludgeon, and it could be worn on the Pretender shell's arm as a shield. So, whoa, something's cracking in there. That is something to watch out for. Look what just happened. I got a major stress mark in there. That's why these reviews are good. I break toys so you don't have to. There is a little bit of resistance trying to push this in here. It's kind of hitting the shoulder thing here. And in doing so, that looks like that's bent a little bit. And it's not a proper fit. So I did it so many times with the original one, I wasn't being very careful. I just figured it would pop in like the original, but not so much. You're going to want to be careful with that because it's not as straightforward a fit as you would think. It's on there. It feels like it's barely on there. Okay, so luckily it didn't break off. It's on there, but take extra care with that. Well, it's cool that that's on there. Also, a bunch of extra hands have been included here, so he is an action figure more than a transformer. And there's some gripping hands. gripping hands for either arm, and a fist, and then I guess some kind of martial arts. Reminds me of Obi-Wan Kenobi's pose when he's posing the sword. And he comes with a bunch of weapons too. So I know this one very well. This was the gun that the original Bludgeon came with. Very faithfully recreated. It looks like the hands that are on him are gripping hands, and then these hands have a little trigger finger on them. So if you want him to be blasting away with his blaster, you can do that. And this is kind of a totally new buck. It's not reusing the He-Man Classics buck like the Thundercats do and the Silverhawks do, or the general design of them. I'm going to take this off just because it's pretty bulky and in the way. But the range on it, the posability is actually fantastic. The thing that's getting in the way here is the skirt, but they've put a split in the side. You can see this elbow joint is a little loose here. It shouldn't be swinging around freely like that. It's a little too loose with the gun in it. The other one is fine if there's nothing in it, but it looks like the weight of a weapon will cause it to swing around. But this split that they've put in the skirt will allow him a lot more range, which is vital for samurai style character. You can get some really nice dynamic poses with him. Being a Transformer, he does kind of get in his own way. The armor parts are hitting the helmet and whatnot. Some resistance moving the arm up here. And the helmet is kind of loose. You can get it on there. It grabs on and you can see it's not coming off from being shaken. But it doesn't take much, just a little bump from a shoulder pad to knock it loose. So if you really like to futz and pose around, this is a figure. It seems like he's got a little bit of floppiness to him, and that helmet is going to be an issue. A little bit of sticky tack to secure that. A little better might help. And then a weapon that the original sorely needed and didn't have is the sword, and there's actually a pair of swords. One long and one short. Really nice detailing on them. And they come with sheaths too, so it looks like on the back he doesn't have a hole. And now I'm a little cautious about plugging these in. With what happened with the tank turret. That's a tight fit. And the sword fits in like that. Perfect fit. Beautiful. And I think these shoulder pads are really getting in the way. I want to see if the arm can reach back. I've done this with a couple of other figures. Yeah, I can. He's got enough range to reach back and grab the sword. Almost. Not quite enough range in the elbow, but it's close. Watch out for those shoulder pads. That paint on the edges of them is definitely going to get worn off. I've already worn off a little bit there. But as a guy who owned the original Bludgeon, a little bit of unfinished business here, having a Bludgeon that looks so much like the original one. And he's finally got a sword. So open the hand up a little bit so that we're not damaging the hilt. And get the other sword in the other hand so you can have a little bit of a storm shadow pose here. The sword's in front of him, and the short sword has a holder itself, which you can pop on the side. It's nice that he's got these holes all over himself. So one for the long sword, one for the short. The gun, I don't know if you can store it when it's not being used anywhere. I don't believe so. This looks like a separate piece that's been glued on. And then the tank turret, which I wonder if this is removable. It was on the original one. It's wiggling, but I think it's glued in place. And pop that in there. Really, really nice looking figure. And then in addition to all those extra parts, he comes with an extra head and an extra helmet. And this one has some destroyed neck joint circuitry hanging out of it. I think this is a comic reference. Gets his head pulled off, probably. So this is actually an alternate head if you want. You can pull this neck joint out. It comes out fairly easily. Take this helmet off and it's an alternate helmet. So I'm thinking this is a more comic accurate helmet. This would be the toy accurate helmet. And I don't know. Looks the comic one looks pretty toy accurate actually. So maybe the G2 comic. I don't know, I don't have one handy to check, but you can do a head swap here. And instead of the G1 toy head, which is just basically a skull, you can have the screaming head and pop this alternate helmet on. That is a really nice helmet. That's a big extra accessory. Looks really nice with that particular head, or the original toy helmet. Really liking this one actually, even though it's not G1 toy accurate. It's really nice. And he's got little red eyes painted in there. And I just looked up on TF Wiki and can confirm that this is a G2 comic head. And it's referencing the scene where G2 tank Megatron rips off Bludgeon's head and takes back leadership of the Decepticons. So that's what that is in reference to. And before I do a couple of comparisons, just wanted to show off this amazing pose using those pointing fingers. You can get the hand holding the sword above the head, ready to strike. The only problem with trying to do this pose is this shoulder pad, once again, getting in his own way. It would look a little better if the arm would come out a little bit more, but it's limiting his arm articulation out to the side. That's a really beautiful pose. And to close out, some size comparisons alongside some of the G1 classic pretenders. And I think his size, if you're going to have him part of your G1 collection, is perfect. I think it's better than the G1 Bludgeon was. He should be bigger than these Pretender Autobots. And alongside some Decepticon leaders. Saw this guy just a minute ago. G2 Megatron. And that looks about right. He should be a little dwarfed by G2 Megatron. G1 Megatron. A little bit bigger. And, well, the scales are all over the place with G1. There's a anime version, Galvatron. So, you know, it's not going to match up perfectly with everything just because nothing matches up perfectly with anything in G1. But in terms of plopping them alongside some of the later releases of Transformers like the Headmasters and such, I think this is a really great consolation for the G1 Bludgeon. It's a fraction of the price of a G1 Bludgeon. Unfortunately, doesn't seem to be any plans on reissuing G1 Bludgeon. And really, even if they did, like I said, I had it. It's really not impressive. I would have kept it if it was even halfway decent. It's a Pretender, and Pretenders just kind of suck. with how limited they are, and then how unimpressive the transformer inside of them is. So as kind of loose and floppy as this guy is, I wish he was a little sturdier. In terms of look, I think he's better than the G1 Bludgeon. He's got a similar enough paint job and detailing that he's not, you know, super detailed compared to the original one. I think he can still fit in with G1 Transformers. And then he's got the articulation if you just want to pose him in dynamic samurai poses, despite all of the extra articulation. I think he's still retro looking enough, basic looking enough that he can still look good next to guys like Dreadwind and Darkwing. Darkwing. I can never remember what their individual names are or their combined name. But if you want to just kind of simplify, not make the pose quite as dynamic, make it look more like a G1 kind of static looking pretender, that fits in even better with G1 Transformers. Just basically a slightly upgraded G1 pretender shell. So like most Ultimates figures, as well as those new indie reissue figures I just looked at, a little more than I would have liked to have paid, but way cheaper than the alternative of the original, and definitely some advantages over the original. Thanks for checking the video out. Feel free to leave a comment below, and to join the tribe, hit subscribe. Nerdmastay.